Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider and like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too, and let's crack on with today's first story. Much love guys. Now today's first story comes from Throwaway Jade 94 from the Relationship Advice subreddit, and it says, my 30 female student, 18 male, made a super creepy comment. My husband, 35 male, thinks I'm being paranoid. And just to give you a couple of trigger warnings before we do get into this story, it contains talking about stalking, harassment, and invasion of privacy. So if you want to skip it, please feel free to do so. Timestamps are always down in the description and along the timeline below. Now let's get started. I'm a high school English teacher and have been for a few years. In that time, as a woman, I've been used to teenage boys behaving awkwardly around me sometimes, and pheromones are part of the deal. There have been occasional comments, but generally in the vein of, Miss, so-and-so has a crush on you, or Miss, would you be so-and-so's Valentine? It's all in good humor, in front of the whole class or a large group, and is well-meaning. My school throws a January ball for seniors, 16 to 18, which is basically an opportunity to celebrate the start of another calendar year. As it's after hours, not every teacher has to attend, and this year I was asked to chaperone. There is no alcohol permitted, but obviously some of them sneak in hip flasks and so on. During this month's ball, 2 students were huddled at a table in the corner of the hall, not dancing, just keeping to themselves. I know them well as problematic students who have difficulties socially, but also perform poorly academically, so they don't fit in with the popular crowd or the nerdy lot. You have some of these every year. Poor hygiene, greasy hair, long fingernails, that sort of thing. Immediately I could tell they had been drinking from the way they spoke and smelled, and asked them to hand over any alcohol they had. One of the boys, call him Stuart, started protesting. He said the following, and I'm 100% sure this is what he actually said. Come on miss, don't pretend you don't want to open a bottle of Bailey's when you get home. Feet up in your dressing gown, watching the new TV. Give us a break. Now, as soon as he said this, I felt my heart drop into my stomach and got cold all over. I had just bought a bottle of Bailey's Irish cream for myself the weekend before the dance. I am in the habit on nights where I don't have much marking/planning and want to treat myself, of having a bath and watching a movie/series in my dressing gown. My husband bought a new television over Christmas. I asked him how he knew those things, and he feigned ignorance, basically saying it was a lucky guess. I was so shaken that I left, and a short while later, they both left. But that night, I could barely sleep, and my paranoia kept growing. I simply cannot believe that he could have guessed all 3 of those things. One maybe, but no way all 3. My husband is away for work currently. I phoned and told him about it, and he basically downplayed my concerns, saying I probably mentioned those things to my class at various points, and this student has just remembered it. I would never mention those things. I just wouldn't, and I'm sure I haven't. I've become more skittish at home when I hear noises. I only live in a small house, but when I arrive home from buying groceries, I check every single room and cupboard before I lock the doors. I've also arranged to have the locks changed. When cars stop by outside the house, I turn all the lights off and peek at them through the blinds. I'm having trouble sleeping. In class, the student is quiet and the same as ever. Not completing homework assignments, distracted in class. My husband is growing increasingly exasperated and worried more for my mental health than the possibility this student could somehow know the details of my personal life. I mentioned it to my supervisor as well, and she also basically reasoned that I had either misheard what he said, it was a coincidence, or a combination of the 2. What's the play here? I'm seriously freaked out. Don't know how to even begin putting this to rest. OP first comes in with an update on the same post just to explain some of the details that she was talking about. She said, I wasn't expecting this post to receive so much attention. I'm really grateful to so many people who have validated my concerns and helped me develop a plan of action. I got home a little while ago, and I'm going out shortly with a friend to try and rule out Bluetooth and Wi-Fi devices with my neighbors. After that, the 2 of us will try and conduct a meticulous search of the house for any concealed devices, using the lights out phone camera trick some people recommended, and some other tips I found online. Just to clarify a couple of points that I've seen raised a few times. Dressing gown is a really common term here in England for what Americans might call a robe. It's absolutely common parlance. Here, most people I know would associate a robe with something a wizard might wear, in terms of it being a lucky guess. If he had just said, relax with a glass of wine, I might have assumed so, but the dressing gown comment plus the Bailey's comment when I just bought a bottle and the explicit mention of a new television when I'm 100% certain I did not misinterpret. These things make it so much harder to write off as a coincidence. As far as social media goes, I have Instagram, which is set to private under my maiden name. My profile picture is not of me. I'm not in the habit of connecting with former students. I only have 3 who have all gone on to study English at university and have used me as references. I also have a Snapchat, which I only use with my husband and very close friends. I've posted nothing about my new television, and I also don't think I've mentioned this to colleagues, let alone students. Certainly, I said nothing about the Baileys I just bought. Absolutely not. That comment did come across creepy as hell, especially when it's specifically he mentions Baileys instead of, like you said, just a glass of wine or something along those lines, and he specifically mentions a new TV rather than just the TV. It just all felt way too specific to be a coincidence. There was I think it's 3 separate personal details that aren't publicly available. Just red flags all around. So, trust your gut, because if you're wrong, then you've lost nothing in the end. I've seen way too many dangerous situations, both in real life and in various documentaries, where, you're being told you're being paranoid when there is a legitimate reason for concern here. I think general advice whenever I have seen this kind of stuff is document everything with dates and exact quotes, so you're not going mad with this kind of stuff, so you can see it. Because I think, you forget the details sometimes and then it gets all muddled up in your head. But Mocker says to DOP, is it possible that you or your husband were observed buying the new TV and the Baileys? The student's parents could have seen either purchase and said, oh, throwaway, just got a new LG 65-inch. I agree you should do a sweep for cameras, ask a techish friend for help, but that would necessitate figuring out how the cameras got there, which opens up a larger conspiracy. Opie says, how can I do a sweep for the cameras? Genuinely want to know. Which Mocker says, well, I'm in IT, but not that area. If there was a camera, logically it would have to be transmitting, so probably use a Wi-Fi connection. I've read that skimmers in gas stations' credit card payment units can send data through Wi-Fi, so the bad actor doesn't have to retrieve it. That Wi-Fi should show up on your phone if you look at various Wi-Fi offerings on your phone. You'd have to take into consideration closeness of neighbors' houses and their routers, so it's a guess. How a camera got there is another puzzle. Occam's razor says to look at the easier likelihood. So can someone be looking in your window as you sip Baileys in a nightgown and also notice your recycle bin with a discarded LG TV box recently? Bopar says, I'm not a huge techie, but I've been around the block a few times. Your husband is being naive. And while I appreciate people trying to encourage you that the surveillance is happening via Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, and of course investigate those avenues, please also take seriously the idea that you are being stalked. Even stalked for fun with no malicious intent. I mentioned in a separate comment of the idea of a dog, and there are also so many DIY ways of alarming or otherwise reinforcing your house that don't involve tech, if you look on YouTube for example, hoping you stay safe. So, at some point later, Opie comes in with the update and says, I wasn't going to post an update here, but the number of worried people who have reached out to me made me reconsider. After a thorough search of my house, I found 2 devices. They seem to be camera devices. I don't know if audio is included. One of them was in the smoke detector in my bedroom, while the other was concealed in the wall of my living room. Looking at an old picture of my bedroom, it looks like the smoke detector itself has changed very slightly. I think that the new one is a device in itself, which the culprit somehow switched with the old one without us noticing. The matter has now been referred to the police. If it wasn't so many of you taking me seriously and giving me practical advice, I wouldn't have had the courage to check, especially given my husband downplaying the concerns. He's been very apologetic and is coming back from his work trip early, but I've asked to spend some time apart and will be staying with my parents for a while. I'm glad I raised the issue with the head at my school and a couple of others, and there's a paper trail. Another suggestion from the thread. Needless to say, I'm completely shaken to my core. I have the most revolting feeling of my privacy being invaded. I have no idea how many people have been involved in this, but phones have been taken from students and we should have more answers soon. I won't be making any more posts or updates. Thank you again to everyone for affirming me and making me feel sane. Holy shit, that is absolutely terrifying. I was honestly thinking along the lines of this guy just looking through the window. I'm not saying that makes it any better, but he's actually gone inside the house to put cameras in places, the living room of all places, so whoever it is must know her and her husband's full schedule to be able to access the house when they're not about. But of course, there was other people saying about this, and the husband may be a factor in this as well, because he travels for work. He may have installed the cameras to keep an eye on his wife. But then we go back to the Baileys and new TV comment. Oh, what a absolute mindfuck situation. But what do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. What are your thoughts on it? And let's move on to another story. Now, our next story comes from the True Off My Chest subreddit from CaseyJuneJuly, and it says, I finally left my husband. Sorry in advance for the long post. I, 26 female, have been with my husband, 29 male, let's call him Kyle, for 7 years, married for 4. Our relationship began as something too good to be true. It was amazing and made my life so much brighter, and we were truly best friends from the start. We moved in together after only 3 weeks of knowing each other and were inseparable. We were the couple people would say, I just want something like you and Kyle. You two are so perfect for each other. And I agreed. We weren't each other's typical type, and it felt like the universe brought us together. A year and a half later, he planned an elaborate proposal and we got engaged. It was magical. I couldn't have planned anything more special and romantic. We planned to get married a year and a half later. After a year, we went on our bachelor/bachelorette trips, and we had our first fight after being together for 2.5 years. Since my bachelorette party was a month before his, he set some ground rules. Call every night when you get back to the house, and no hanging out at houses with men for me and women for him. My bachelorette party went perfectly without even a temptation of breaking the rules. Just a weekend hanging out on the beach with my girls. Skip to his bachelor party. He disappears for 6 hours. No calls, no texts, and then I see one of his friends on social media post that they're hanging out with a group of girls, and in the video, Kyle is standing really close to a girl in a red bikini. They are talking, and she is holding his phone in her hand. I tried calling and texting him and his friends for hours without a response. When I finally got in contact with him, he said his phone was inside charging, and he was drunk and didn't think of them hanging out with the girls would be an issue. I'm not stupid. I know he most likely cheated on me, but I chose to go forward with a wedding which was now only 3 months away, partly because I loved him and knew I'd forgive him eventually. My parents had already spent a lot of money on our wedding. Our wedding was beautiful. It was a perfect day. Shortly after, COVID hit, and we were stuck not being able to live our normal life, going out and traveling often. 9 months into marriage, I found out that he created a fake social media account. I say fake because it was not his main profile, but he used his real name, Stupid, and was following several women. One was his ex. I made him pack his things and move out of our house. After being separated for 3 weeks, I found no evidence that he was actually contacting any of these women. He promised he'd never do something like that again. I forgave him, and he moved back in. My family was also encouraging me to get back together with him. Our relationship was never better. It felt stronger and we were more connected. We bought our first house 1.5 years later, and we found out I was pregnant 4 months after we moved in. This is where everything begins to crumble. We did talk about me getting off my birth control and decided it was the right time for us to start trying for a baby. When I told him I was pregnant, he did not have the reaction I thought he would have. A big reason why I fell in love with this man is because I knew he'd be a great father. He's amazing with our kids and always talked about wanting a family of his own. He's a big kid at heart. When it came to my pregnancy, he didn't want to talk about anything baby related and seemed to pretend the baby didn't exist. He started going out more without me and planned more guys trips. I didn't mind. I'm more of a homebody and love being at home, nesting and preparing for the baby to come. I thought he was feeling overwhelmed with life changes that would be here soon and just needed some time to let his hair down. I'm not a jealous person. I was very confident that he wouldn't cheat on me because he was my best friend. I did everything for him, and his friends would often talk about how lucky he was to have me as his partner. I also think I'm quite beautiful. He also began to treat me as more of a roommate during this crisis. We've had a few small arguments in the past of him taking advantage of me cooking and cleaning for him without him showing appreciation. He stopped taking me on dates or even asking me if I'd want to go with him and his friends when they'd hang out. This was shocking to me because we'd been inseparable for the last 5 years. I found out 3 weeks ago that he cheated on me while on one of his boys' trips last summer. He met a girl at a bar, bought her drinks, danced and made out, even took a picture together. They exchanged numbers, and the next day she found out he was married and blocked her on all of his social media and her phone number. This is how I found her. 2 weeks prior to me finding out about this girl, I found his anonymous online profile and saw that he had been sending explicit photos. I confronted him and he apologized, saying he was depressed. I had already planned to leave and move in with my mum for a while. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something else that I was missing. So I checked his blocked accounts on social media and thought it was strange that there was a girl I didn't know on the list. I messaged her and she spilt the tea, even telling me that his friends were lying with him, telling her he was single. I confronted him and he said she was lying, of course. I left and moved in with my mum. Since then I found out other information, not as damning, but activity that I wouldn't want my husband doing behind my back. I feel sick and devastated that he could do something like this to not only me, but to our child. Did I mention I was at home alone for 8 days with our 5-month-old baby while he was on a trip where he made out with another girl? I feel like I sacrificed so much of my happiness for this man, trying to make his life as happy as possible, and he gave it all up for what? Like I said, I'm not stupid, so I know there are probably more instances of him cheating, but I don't want to know. I'm already done. So someone was asking OP, how did the husband take the news on the divorce? OP said he thinks I will still come back to him. Not surprising considering the past, but I'm looking for houses and will not be going back. He stepped up as a father and loves being with our son. He sees him every chance he gets. Commenter says, do you mind me asking, when did he step up though? Is it just to win you back? He'd been on regular boys trips for extended periods after your baby was born. OP said he started being more active in our son's life before I left him. He'd been on a couple before the baby was born, but I'd usually go with him. After the baby, it was more frequent and I didn't go because I wasn't asked or because I didn't want to leave my son for days at a time. I know a lot of people have an issue with the boys trip, but I don't want to go to 3 or 4 car shows in a year or on multiple ATV rides a year. I thought I should be able to trust my partner to take trips that are about his interests and not feel like I had to go to babysit him. Commenter said there is so much emphasis on the proposal and wedding. I think people forget to pick a partner differently. You had too much icing and not enough cake. The focus was on the wrong elements. The right person could ask you while watching your favorite program. I'm sorry this happened to you. Please learn from it and find quality. OP says trust me. If I could tell 19-year-old me not to fall in love with him and 22-year-old me not to marry him, I would. So it was 9 months later that OP came in with their update and said, not sure if anyone will care, but I found myself thinking about this post a lot and wanted to give an update. I posted here around 9 months ago about leaving my husband after finding out he had been cheating on me. The first few months were hard. I tried to maintain a friendship with him for the sake of our son, but just found myself getting hurt over and over again. So I distanced myself, and after a while, I decided to get on a dating app, mostly to keep my mind off of him. I met someone and we connected instantly. I call him Matt. We text and talk for a week before meeting in person. I didn't think it would be serious. I just wanted to get out of the house and have some fun. Turns out, he's an amazing man. I didn't even know people like him existed. He's sweet and thoughtful. He makes me laugh until I can't breathe. He's understanding, supportive, and actually listens when I talk to him. He's a parent too, loves his kids more than anything. I've now been dating Matt for 6 months, and I don't think I've ever been this happy in my life. I look back at my marriage with Kyle in disbelief. How did I not notice how terrible he was for so long? Matt brings me flowers and surprises me with date nights and little gifts just to show me he was thinking about me when we aren't together. Despite living an hour away, he brings food to me and my sons when we are sick. If I'm having a bad day, he lets me talk his ear off and drops off my favorite sweets at my house. Matt is an amazing cook, and we trade off nights in the kitchen. When it's my turn to cook, he spends quality time with the kids. The laughter in the house is almost constant. This is so far off from what my life was with Kyle. My ex only sees our son about 4 days a month and is constantly finding excuses to leave him with me or drop him off with his grandparents for the weekend. Being with a man who loves his kids and mine has really opened my eyes to what kind of father Kyle is. Matt and I don't live together. He spends a lot of time at my house because my home is bigger. It accommodates all of us better than his house, and I have my son almost every day. Despite not living with me, he helps clean, does laundry, helps fix things around the house. He always comments that I don't let him do enough, but he does more for me than anyone ever has in my life. He picks me up and takes me on so much that he doesn't have to, but he does it with a smile on his face. He never lets a day pass without telling me how much he loves and appreciates me. I've learned from my past and won't be moving in with anyone anytime soon. I was fooled once and that won't happen again. Neither Matt or I want any more kids, so we're happy with the way our life is now. No pressure, just living our lives happily alongside each other with our kids. To everyone out there who hopes your partner will change and grow up, they won't, and most likely never will. Find someone who makes you happy because they want to, not because you're begging them to. There are good people out there. Commenter says to OP, the way he treated your son during the pregnancy and the way he is doing it now. Ugh. You should give his parental rights to you because I'm sure he will let this kid down over and over. OP says I've talked to Kyle about signing his rights over. His parents adore my son, and I think they'd disown Kyle if he ever did. So he's doing the bare minimum to keep them happy. And it always makes me really sad when there's children involved like that, and he's just seeing them 4 days of the month. I mean, come on, man. I'm so glad that OP was able to meet someone who does appreciate the both of them and they're enjoying their lives at this moment in time. But what do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And just a huge thank you for being here today, getting involved in the stories, your love, your support, your time. It always means the absolute world to me, you absolute cheeky so-and-so. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Take care and much love.
Yeah, man, I remember being so naive when life was good, weather and palm trees. Back in the day, you were everything I need. But then along came a time when you crushed my dreams. Oh yeah, you played me like a fool when you made me believe that the line between love wasn't thick enough to read. Oh yeah, you see we in despair, crime everywhere. You're selling false hope cause you just don't care. Nah, you just don't care.